told you we'd be right back. If you're listening live on our website, we have to pause the video in between breaks, and we're working on a solution to fix that. I've got a new player I'm going to institute, which will auto-play when we are broadcasting live. So you won't have to, hit the play button again. I know that's disconcerting for some people. I've gotten email about it. It's just the way technology works. But with the new player that we're going to institute, we're working on revamping our website, by the way, as well. And let me take this as an opportunity to put a call out for some help and assistance. We're working on the new video production, and I need some people that can help me do some things. One, I need somebody who can transcribe. In other words, you can get the audio and transcribe it into text for us, a speech-to-text transcription. If you are a court reporter, if you've got court reporter skills, if you've got transcription skills, please email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. If you have the wherewithal and the ability, if you're a writer and you would like to help us write some of the material that we're going to use in our video presentations, I would really, really like to hear from you. You can write me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. I need your help, and we are looking for people that can help us in the production realm for the new video production that we're doing. You know, the radio, it's very off the cuff, right? In other words, when I do these radio programs, I pull up a news article that I want to talk about, and most of this is just right off the top of my head, other than the fact that I pull a comment or a quote out of a story. But I use the story basically as my hinge pin. I do my homework and my research about it. I'm fully informed about it to the point where I can talk about it realistically. But, on a television environment, that's going to be a little bit different. And so, when I make a quote, I don't want to have to, in a television show, you want to look directly into the camera, right? And so, while I do that with you here, I also pull my eyes away, and you can see that I'm reviewing or reading some information, or I'm pulling a quote off. I want to be able to change that a little bit. And so I want to rewrite or pre-script, if you will, some of these television videos that we're going to be doing. I am really, really in need of help. You don't have to be local. I don't care where you are. You could be in Timbuktu for all I care. But if you can help us, and if you are willing to step up to the plate and do something to help this show, and you don't have, if you've got monetary resources, please, by all means, we're desperately in need of monetary resources. But if you don't have that, and you've got other skill sets, or if you've got both, then please contact me and ask me, what can I do to help? Because I need somebody, especially someone who's got either transcription, shorthand, or court reporter skills. If you've ever done that before, if you've been someone who transcribed for doctors or for lawyers or in a legal environment, that's what I need. And I really, really, we'd like to put together a book utilizing a lot of the content that we've developed over the years with this program and this show. And so one of the ways that we can do that is by taking the transcriptions of what we've done and, combining it all. And then, of course, somebody will have to go through it. I'll have to go through it and edit it and all of that kind of thing. But we believe that, listen, after, 1,000+ shows, we've got more than enough material to put together a pretty substantial book about what's going on. And also because we want to be able to transcribe some of the material from these radio shows and be able to incorporate that into the video programming. So if you can help us, please do. I would really, really appreciate the opportunity to work with you. I know that, everybody's pressed for time. Everybody's pressed for money. I know the economy is terrible, but we really need your help. I don't like putting calls out there for money very much because this isn't about money. We don't sell anything. We don't have anything on our website, where we offer books or T-shirts or magazines or any of that kind of thing. We don't push somebody's products. We have a few supporters who we do their ads for them. But listen, we are not, typically one of these groups that's out there selling, snake oil or magic cream or some other garbage. We don't sit there and do all of this stuff about, buy supplements or vitamins or vitamins or whatever. I mean, that's not really our thing. The reason I don't get into that is because I think it detracts from the message if all I'm really reporting is about how great the products are that I'm selling. And so if you want to hear programming that's clear of that, then it needs your support. It's kind of like public television, right? If you want to see ad-free television, then you've got to help by supporting them. And, we don't hold telethons, although I probably ought to. I've been asked why I don't repeatedly. And because I'm not somebody who goes out there liking to dig into your pocket all the time. But we do need help. There's ways that you can do that. You can mail us a check. Our address is P.O. Box 1195 in West Plains, Missouri. That's 65775. In other words, it's America's Voice Now, P.O. Box 1195 in West Plains, Missouri, 65775. Or you can go straight onto our website at americasvoicenow.org, and you can simply make a donation through PayPal. Even if you don't have a PayPal account, you can use a credit card or a debit card, and we're grateful for anything that you can do to support us, whether it's a few pennies a month or whether it's a little bit more. Listen, we're grateful for that. If you are someone who is well-heeled and you can support this program on a larger basis, I'd be more than willing to have an individual discussion with you about how you can do that. You can contact me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. You can also call our hotline. You can call 417-204-5130. You can leave a message there. Or you can call into the radio program at 417-204-5141. Okay. I want to talk about this thing of government as the farmer and the rancher, and you are the crop and the livestock. And the reason I say that is because we have a glut, a torrent of regulations that are coming out of administrative agencies across the country. The EPA announced the other day that they have 6,000 new regulations that they're intending to implement. 6,000. There are, there's an article on National Review, and I'll put it in the content section of this YouTube video so that you can find the article. But it says, why do we have excess regulation, and can we get rid of it? And the real argument here about this is that these regulations are so stunning. When you hear some of the statistics, you're going to be blown away. The agencies that make up the administrative agency lists for the federal government, and for the record, there are literally thousands of them, all of them, with the exception of Commerce and Border Patrol, are extra-constitutional. In other words, Congress has no authority to subdelegate our authority that we've given to them, to agencies who then bypass Congress by making laws which is against the Constitution. And yet, they have passed literally hundreds of thousands of regulations and rules that parade about as law and have all the full force and effect of law, but aren't called law. Now, that brings up the mental, picture of if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, if it's got wings and webbed feet, it's a duck. 1,700 pages have been added to the Federal Register, which is where all of these rules are promulgated. And this is the 5th largest ever in a week, ladies and gentlemen. 1,700 pages in a week. Last week, 66 new final regulations were published in the Federal Register. There were 78 new final rules the previous week. That's the equivalent of a new regulation every 2.5 hours. In all, 3,186 final rules have been published in the Federal Register just this year alone. The total tally for 2013 at this rate will be 3,604 brand new final rules. Last week, 1,689 new pages were added, bringing the total up to 68,313 pages that make up all of the rules and regulations which you are supposed to know, be familiar with, and avoid crossing. You see, that, ladies and gentlemen, is where the problem lies. Our founders told us that any time that the laws get to the point where the average person can't understand them, tyranny exists. And at this point, who can possibly keep up with 68,313 pages of new rules and regulations that, frankly, You don't know whether they apply to you or not. And they're written in such legalese that for all intents and purposes, even if you had the time to sit down and read all of that, you'd never accomplish the task. I mean, we couldn't get Congress to read the 2,000-page Obamacare bill. How can we possibly get them to read 68,313 pages of rules that are passed by their subdelegates, which we've given them no authority to create? See, I want you to recognize the importance of that. We delegated Congress authority to act on our behalf. In other words, our representative behalf. We say to Congress, listen, we recognize that you guys are in a position where we have put you up as our representatives, and your duty and your obligation under that is to pass law, repeal law, act on in our best interest. You're supposed to represent our needs and our wishes and our desires in the House, and the Senate, the way it was originally drafted by the Constitution and the founders, says that you're supposed to represent your state. Now, of course, with the passage of the 17th Amendment, the Senate no longer represents the states. They're duplicative of the House of Representatives. In other words, they do the exact same job as the House of Representatives, but they represent all the people of the state. Well, the reason why our founders told us that shouldn't be the case is a whole topic for another show, and I probably ought to do an entire show on the 17th Amendment because it is the number one amendment that ought to be repealed. Prior to the 17th Amendment, all state legislatures appointed the senators because the senators were there to be, one, a check against the House as a check against the Senate to keep the states in control, and the states were supposed to be represented by the Senate before the federal government. In other words, the people had their representation in the House, and the 50 states had their representation in the Senate. Because the states are supposed to be the masters of the federal government, not their bribed, cowering slaves, which is, of course, where we are today. When we look at how these regulations are shoveled down our throat, it's impossible for anyone to maintain and keep abreast of all the tidal wave of new information that is pumped into these regulations. There's generally a public comment period where you have 60 days to come out and make a statement. You have an opportunity to, and of course, first of all, you don't even know that that's occurring because more often than not, unless you're on a notification list, you don't even know that a rule is being promulgated, much less how to respond to it. The only people that do are lobbyists and those who have an interest in following this. And, of course, they've got staff that sit there and somebody's responsible to get the Federal Register notations and say, oh, okay, this is a farming issue, and so we ought to respond to that because we represent agri-tyrants or something. But average farmers don't have a staff of people to sit there and say, hey, this is a farmer's bill, and we really ought to be responding to this. See, the truth of the matter is, these federal regulations are so outside the constitutional authority because we delegated Congress with the power to act on our behalf, and yet Congress has taken that authority and they've subdelegated it to people who are totally unaccountable to us because they're not elected. In many cases, they're appointed. In almost all cases, they are ideologically aligned with whatever current administration is in power. And so both parties use these people in these administrative agencies to do the one cardinal sin that is supposed to be outside the purview of anyone in government. They bypass the lawmaking responsibilities and duties of Congress by making regulations that do an end run around the constitutional requirement that only Congress can pass a law. Now, their number one argument will always be, well, these aren't law, these are just rules and regulations. Okay. The truth of the matter is they're not just rules and regulations. You can be fined, you can be imprisoned as a result of them. They may call them rules and regulations, but they have all the power, the force, and the effect of law. You go before an administrative law judge, and notice the wording that they use. These are administrative agencies. So when you run afoul of one, you go before an administrative law judge. Now, this is a judge who, for all intents and purposes, generally owes its allegiance back to the agency itself, whatever administrative agency they work for or they've been appointed by to hear this case. So if a judge owes their loyalty to an administrative agency, whose side are they on? How can they possibly be objective and impartial? They cannot be, number one. Number two, you don't have a jury trial. You do not get a jury trial in an administrative hearing. That's what they call it. They're not calling it a trial. They call it an administrative hearing. You see, these are all legalese ways to parse their way around the prohibition that no one can pass the law but Congress. Well, these aren't laws. They're rules and regulations, and you're not subjected to them under like you would be under law. You're just going before an administrative judge for a hearing. But that judge has the authority and the power to fine you, seize your property, imprison you. Hey, guys, if it walks like a duck, if it waggles its tail, if it's got webbed feet, if it's got wings, and it's got a beak, and it says Aflac, it's a duck. I mean, the absurdity of this is it's so obvious on its face that, you know, this is the equivalent of someone you know who walks into a room wearing a costume and you say, well, I know that's you, Bob. And he says, no, it's not me. Come on, Bob, I know it's you. I know your clothes. I know the gait the way you walk. I know, I recognize the articles on your person. I know it's you, Bob. Nope, it's not me. Bob, if you take the mask off, everybody here at the party will recognize that it's you. Nope, it's not me. Okay. Okay, Bob, it's not you. I mean, look, the ridiculousness of this point, of the way in which this is done, is so obvious a fraud on its face that it's astounding to me that the American population has allowed it to continue to this extent. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the tyranny that our founders warned us about. This is exactly what they told us we should be on the watch for. Well, what am I supposed to do? I'm only one person. I know I've heard that argument a million times. I don't even have an answer for it, other than to say that we need to, as a collective group, rise up and say we've had enough. Every administrative agency is frozen in time. All regulations are ended. And then we begin a repeal process to eliminate those that are out there. Look, if the EPA came out with 6,000 new regulations that they're going to institute on us, how many of those are actually beneficial? Really? You see, the government and the president in particular has created those 6,000 new regulations because he's trying to destroy the coal industry. And so a large, significant number of those new regulations are going to deal with, and this is how he's instituting his global warming agenda or his climate change agenda or whatever nuanced name you want to give it this week. The goal is for him to be able to bypass Congress because Congress won't pass the regs he wants. They won't pass the laws he wants. So he's going to do it instead with rules and regulations that parade about and promulgate themselves as law, but aren't called that. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's such a sham on its face that anyone who looks at it can immediately recognize the illegality and the unconstitutionality of it. And it's shameful that everyone in Congress wants to dance around the issue. They will never address this. They'll never talk about it. Well, first of all, the reason they won't is because they have authorized these agencies to act on your behalf. The problem is that the restriction that you've given Congress is that you must act on our behalf. And when they subdelegate that power to these administrative agencies, they don't put that same restriction in place. Therein lies the problem. I've used the analogy before. I give you a power of attorney. I say to you, I can't close on this real estate deal, so I'm giving you my checkbook, and I'm giving you this piece of paper that says you may sign on my behalf for any business that has to be transacted. And you say, great, I appreciate your showing trust in me. So then I go off out of the country on my trip while you go and close my real estate deal. And you show up at the closing, and you sign the documents, and you take possession of the house, and you write a check. Then you say to the attorney sitting across the table from you, hey, listen, I want you to draft up a transfer document that says this property has to be put in my name. And the attorney says, I don't know, that's a little questionable. And you say, well, wait a second now. I have a piece of paper right in front of me that says I have a power of attorney to act on Michael's behalf. And I have this piece of paper that says I can sign any document in his name. So I want the transfer documents. And then he signs the piece of property over to himself. And then because he's got your checkbook, he goes out there and he spends money. Spends money that's not his, that he's not authorized, because the tone and the tenor upon which I gave him my authority was not to go out there and go on vacation. It was not so that I could let him steal my goods and my values and my property. It was so that he would act on my behalf. Now, Congress is, in the same instance, not only are they doing that, in other words, they're abusing the trust that we've given them, but in addition to that, they're saying, hey, you know what? I've got a family member who I'm going to bring in here, and I'm going to subdelegate. I'm going to give that family member power of attorney to act on your behalf also, Michael. And I know you don't know them, and I know you don't trust them, and I know that they've been convicted before of fraud, but I'm going to give it to them anyway because I have the ability to sign, and I have the ability to delegate your authority to me. Well, no, he doesn't. But I didn't limit the paper to say that. That's essentially where we are. Congress has subdelegated the power that you have given them to act objectively, ethically, morally on your behalf. They have subdelegated it to people who, one, you did not choose, you did not elect, and you have zero control over. Those people are raiding the Treasury, stealing your goods and land, abusing you with these rules and regulations that they call non-law. It's a farce. It's a joke. And there is zero constitutional authority for administrative agencies. Zero. There are only two that are constitutionally authorized to exist. Commerce, Border Patrol. That's it. Because Commerce is given to the federal government as a power and authority that they have to regulate commerce, right? Among the states. By the same token, the border has been designated as a federal authority because they are supposed to protect states from the invasion of those borders. Now, we could do an entire show on whether or not the current situation that we have with immigration is an invasion, and I submit to you that it is, but that's not for this discussion. The truth is that what we have right now is a government that has grown by leaps and bounds. I've drawn this analogy for you before, too. Remember the old movie The Blob with Steve McQueen from the 60s, where this thing landed from space and it ate a grasshopper, and then it grew, and then it ate a mouse, and it grew again, and then it ate a cat, and it grew again, and then it ate a cow, and it grew again. And by the end of the movie, the thing is so big that it swarms over a bowling alley that McQueen and the female co-lead, I've forgotten her name, are in, and it's oozing through the windows, and basically it's eating any living organism and organic product in sight. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where we are. The federal government is a farmer and a rancher, and you are the crop and the livestock to be used at will by them for their purposes. You no longer matter. Like a farmer, you says, I am growing these crops so I can produce and I can earn money with them, and I can use them for my own best interest. And so he grows a group of what? Tomatoes or corn or peas or whatever. Whether or not he loses a few heads of a few ears of corn during the process of harvesting that is really not of material interest to him. He's more interested in the overall picture of how many bushels do I get. But he doesn't mind losing a few bushels in the collection process. By the same token, a rancher who's got literally hundreds and hundreds of heads of cattle hey, from time to time, one or two got to be sacrificed. That's just the way it goes. You gotta leave a few crumbs when you break up the cookie. I mean, this is the way and the viewpoint which they have upon you. You are here to do one thing: produce. You're here to produce tax revenues, and you're here to produce whatever they can draw off of you in fines and penalties and any other type of remuneration that they can get out of you. Like a sheep, you are shorn on a routine basis. You know, the sheep, the hair grows out. Isn't long before they say, okay, bring all the sheep in, and somebody get out there with a razor and clip it off, and we're going to make a nice wool sweater for Mike out of that. They sell the wool, and in about a few months, the sheep has grown his hair all back, and we go through the whole process all over again. I mean, truthfully, the only time politicians care about you is just before they're elected. Sometime around June and July, they get serious about talking to you. And they talk at you, not to you. So essentially, they get up before a pulpit and they get out there and they expound on how great they are and all the good things they're going to do. They make you promises they know they can't keep. And at the end of the day, you elect them, and then it's right back to the grind again. It's time to shear the sheep. You know, the only time that the farmer really does something good for the sheep is when he wants to lure them in to be shorn. So what does he do? He puts out some grain, and the sheep all come out of the field and say, "Oh my goodness, there's some good grain. There's some grain over there. I'm getting sick of this grass." So the sheep all come in, and then they close the padlock behind it. They close the gate behind them. Then they herd them all down a funnel and into a room where they can be shorn, and then boom, they're released back out into the field again, not to be touched or bothered or even questioned for another couple of months. It is the same cycle, folks. Look at it for what it is. You are a sheep. We the sheeple. You are being shorn. You are here to serve their best interests. From time to time, the rancher says, you know what? We got to cull some of this herd. And some go to market. At the end of the day, the rancher, he takes that profit in his hand and he puts it into his pocket. The fact of the matter is, he doesn't really care that those cattle that have been culled from the herd are going to be terminated and end up on your dinner plate as a steak. That's really not his concern. His concern is, how much can I get for that particular cow? How much is that steer worth to me? What is that calf worth that's going into the veal pot? That's all they're concerned about. You are a product to be bought and sold and traded. And every once in a while, like the pimp, they got to be nice to the whore just to keep her tied in close. You may not like the fact that you're a whore, that you are being used. You may not like the fact that you are a sheeple. But as long as you are continuing to follow the Stockholm Syndrome of loving that which is your tormentor and your oppressor, sheeple is what you are. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael. Please contact us and communicate with us about segments that we do. If you like one or if it's had some value to you, you can email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. You can visit our site at americasvoicenow.org, our Facebook page at facebook.com/America's Voice Now, and our YouTube channel at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. Up there, by the way, we have the ability for you to actually download these programs in a podcast. If you want to download it to a phone or an iPad and listen to it at your own leisure, by all means, please feel free to do that. We appreciate your listenership. We appreciate any support that you can give us. We'll be back in just a moment where we're going to tackle what happens when a police state starts to turn on itself and eat its own. This ought to be a startling, eye-opening experience. We'll be right back.